People base their decisions on the information they have. If you can control the information they have, you can control the decisions they make. If you can control the decisions they make, you can control them. In an effort to control the decisions of voters, the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Office of the Inspector General use security concerns and the classification of information as pretexts to conceal government misconduct from the American people they help to control. Whistleblowers threaten this secrecy-based system of control. The following shows how Executive Assistant Director Jennifer Lee Moore dealt with whistleblowers that threatened to expose FBI political operations. The FBI had dozens of confidential human sources, or CHSs, in the crowd that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. The release of this information had the potential to swing the 2024 presidential race in favor of Donald Trump, undermine the prosecutions of January 6 defendants, and counter the narratives of Democrat politicians seeking office. To protect established narratives and influence the election, Attorney General Merrick Garland, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and Inspector General Michael Horowitz concealed that federal law enforcement had some degree of infiltration among the crowds gathered at the Capitol on January 6th until after the election.
Inspector General Horowitz, over the past 3 years, I've questioned FBI Director Wray and Attorney General Merrick Garland about the federal assets, such as confidential human sources that were present on January 6th at the Capitol, and they have continuously stonewalled me. We've got no answers whatsoever about this from them. Now, you announced that you were going to do a review of the DOJ response and preparation for January 6th. When did you start that review? When did you announce that review?
We announced it in 2021, but we ended up pausing it, reinitiated it last year, and I'm in the process of reviewing a draft of the report.
Started it. Do you have evidence of the number of confidential human sources that were operating on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
Our report will include the information in that regard.
Can you tell us today how many there were? Were there more than 100?
I'm not in a position to say that.
We're 4 years, almost 4 years into this report. When is it going to be released?
In the next couple of months is my hope.
Is there any consideration for the election about the release of this report? Would you delay it in order to not release it right before the election?
At this point, given the process that has to play out in terms of classification review and all of that, I'm not making any, I don't have to make any judgment about that. We're still, that still has to go on. Just to give you a sense of it, when I did the FISA review,
you're saying it's not even going to be done in time for before the election?
It doesn't, I doubt it would be done in time for the election.
It is not a coincidence that the Obama-appointed Horowitz issued his report in the 1 month after the election, but before Donald Trump took office. The misleading and politically timed OIG report is a limited hangout, drafted as part of an effort to maintain control of the narrative surrounding January 6th. A limited hangout is an information management tactic that originated in the espionage trade. When their veil of secrecy is shredded and they can no longer rely on phony cover story to misinform the public, they resort to admitting, sometimes even volunteering, some of the truth while still managing to withhold the key and damaging facts in the case. The public, however, is usually so intrigued by the new information that it never thinks to pursue the matter further. While used by the CIA and other intelligence organizations, the tactic has become popularized in the corporate and political spheres. Michael Horowitz is a master at using limited hangouts to facilitate political cover-ups. For years, the FBI has been retaliating against whistleblowers by indefinitely suspending their security clearance, and then suspending the whistleblower, without pay, for lacking the security clearance the FBI suspended. These indefinite suspensions can sometimes last for years. While under suspension, the employee cannot seek outside employment without first receiving the permission of the FBI, and the FBI has no fixed time limit for even responding to such a request, nor can the employee appeal the suspension. By holding the whistleblower's security clearance in suspension for years, the FBI can force the whistleblower to choose between voluntary resignation or destitution.
We paused the review because of the ongoing criminal work that would, consistent with our practice, we don't interfere with ongoing criminal investigations.
So,
to see precisely how the FBI's whistleblower retaliation system works, we can look at the case of Marcus Allen. Before acting as a whistleblower and reporting potential misconduct on the part of the FBI and its director, Marcus Allen was the 2019 Employee of the Year at the Charlotte Field Office, where he served as a staff operations specialist. As part of his job, Allen would do research and send news articles and other open source materials to individuals on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF. The JTTF in Charlotte was working the January 6 cases. Based on his research, Allen developed serious concerns that federal law enforcement had some degree of infiltration among the crowds gathered at the Capitol on January 6th, and that Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, had not been honest in his testimony before Congress regarding this issue. According to federal law, when an employee of the Federal Bureau of Investigation makes a disclosure of information to a supervisor in the direct chain of command of the employee, the disclosure will be a protected disclosure if the person making it reasonably believes that it evidences any violation of any law, rule, or regulation, or an abuse of authority. On September 29, 2021, Allen made a protected disclosure when he informed his supervisor of his reasonable beliefs that were based on research and later confirmed by the OIG. The email contained links to websites and started out with, "There is a significant counterstory to the events of January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol." The second sentence says, "There is a good possibility the DC elements of our organization are not being forthright about the events of the day or the influence of government assets." At the bottom, the email said, "Recommendation: exercise extreme caution and discretion in pursuit of any investigative inquiries or leads pertaining to the events of the day." In response to Allen making a protected disclosure, Jennifer Lee Moore, the Executive Assistant Director of the FBI's Human Resources Division, retaliated by suspending his security clearance. Moore signed the letter suspending Allen's security clearance on January 10, 2022. Moore's letter says, "The Security Division has learned you have espoused conspiratorial views, both orally and in writing, and promoted unreliable information which indicates support for the events of January 6th. Moore testified that she understood the definition of conspiratorial views to include alternate views to what was known as public knowledge of the events of January 6th. Moore's definition of conspiratorial views is truly frightening. Alternate views to public knowledge is the literal definition of the Orwellian phrase wrongthink, used to refer to beliefs or opinions that run contrary to the prevailing or mainstream orthodoxy. The public knowledge of the events of January 6th was being limited by the Attorney General, Inspector General, and Director of the FBI. Allen's protected disclosures threatened to expand that public knowledge, so Moore retaliated against him. The OIG's belated report now confirms that what Moore testified was a conspiratorial view that was wrongly asserted is the truth, and the unreliable information from a conspiracy website that Moore accused Allen of espousing was sourced from a New York Times article. This email says, "There is a good possibility the DC elements of our organization are not being forthright about the events of the day or the influence of government assets." During Mr. Allen's transcribed interview with the committee, he said that when he wrote this email and this sentence, he was referring to the veracity of Director Wray's testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Are you aware of whether, during his interview with the Security Division, whether it came up that Mr. Allen was questioning the veracity of Director Wray's testimony? I do believe he mentioned that during the interview. Yes, I believe he thought that Director Wray had lied in a statement that he made. And are you aware that his supervisor, at the time when this email was sent, September 29th, are you aware that his supervisor called him into his office? I am aware that his supervisor counseled him. Are FBI employees able to question the veracity of the director's testimony? Of course. Moore testified, "I believe he would have to explain the content of the email because there was concern about the basis behind the email regarding the DC elements to our organization are not being forthright. So I think there was some concern that we have factual information that happened on January 6th. What he was putting out was contrary to the factual information that the public has on January 6th, and they wanted to confirm what he was doing here." Moore sounds more like an assistant director of the Ministry of Truth trying to combat wrongthink than an assistant director of the FBI investigating misconduct. Moore testified that the specific security concerns that resulted in the initial suspension of Mr. Allen's security clearance stem from evidence in emails and instant messages sent on FBI systems. But Moore testified she never reviewed his emails or his instant messages prior to signing the letter suspending his clearance. After Allen's security clearance was revoked, Morse testified that she remembered Allen's comments and instant messages were a cause of concern. But when asked to describe some of the content of Mr. Allen's statements that she found concerning or problematic, she said, "I cannot. I wouldn't be able to quote any of them." Moore testified that the Security Division investigation revealed that on September 29, 2021, Mr. Allen sent an email to multiple colleagues within the FBI that contained links to conspiracy websites. Moore later testified that she was not 100% sure that the Security Division had even reviewed the articles Allen linked in his September 29 email, and she admitted that she had not. When you signed off on the revocation decision with respect to Mr. Allen, did you review all of the information in totality? What I review is a summary document that summarizes the entire investigation. Moore claimed to have no idea who actually wrote the summary that she relied on to revoke Mr. Allen's security clearance. An individual finished the revocation document by finishing documenting the investigation, the facts of the investigation, and summarizing a recommendation. Which individual? I don't know the individual's name. Does the individual work for you? Yes. All right, and who is that? I don't know the specific individual on this case. So we're not talking about thousands of matters you worked on. Mr. Allen is one of them. On the specific investigator? No, sir, I'm sorry, I don't remember it. And this person works for you? Yes, sir. And you don't know the name? Do you remember who submitted the referral? I don't remember who it was signed out by. Do you know what their role at the Charlotte field office was? I'm not sure. Ms. Moore's testimony becomes all the more unbelievable when one realizes she testified that she read the EC with the summary the day before she was testifying. Did you review the EC prior to the interview today? I did. And how long was the EC? It was multiple pages. How many pages? I don't know exactly how many pages it was. Was it 5 pages? 10 pages? 20 pages? 100 pages? I don't remember exactly how many pages it was. It was several pages. Right. I'm just asking, was it 100 pages? Was it less than 50? It was less than 50. Was it less than 5? It was less than 50. Was it less than 5? I don't remember that. Was it more than 10? I don't remember, sir. Was it more than 20? I do not remember exactly. When did you last see it? Yesterday. Okay, so you can't tell us whether it was 5 pages or 20 pages? I read a lot of documents yesterday. Moore testified that before she signed the letter suspending Allen's security clearance, she definitely received a brief on Mr. Allen. When asked specific questions about the process or content of the Allen brief, Moore would only answer with generalities about the usual briefing process and not Allen's specific briefing. And who did you receive the brief from? It would have been from the Security Division. And how was the brief done? Was it in person? Over email? Usually over link. So what was the content of that brief? Did they discuss the specifics of Mr. Allen's case? They would have talked specifics of the case. While Moore claimed she could not remember when the brief occurred or who gave it to her, she testified, "I remember believing that it was compelling enough that I needed to sign the document." When pressed, all Moore would definitively say was, "I just don't remember. I just know I had one on this because it was different." Moore never explained what was different about Allen's brief. Moore denied retaliating against Allen for questioning the veracity of Director Ray's testimony. She claimed she did not know that Allen's reference to the DC elements of our organization are not being forthright was a reference to the director. Moore never said who she thought Allen was referring to in his September 29 email. Did the FBI unlawfully retaliate against Mr. Allen for raising concerns about the veracity of Director Ray's testimony? The FBI absolutely did not retaliate against. And what's the basis for your conclusion? That I use the whole person concept regarding security clearances. I'm not involved in any type of retaliation or anything. I take my job very seriously. I'm very loyal to this country. Myself, I've been charged with making unbiased decisions. His investigation has nothing to do with the statement that he made about the director at all. Does it raise any concerns that this whole security process was kicked off by a September 29th email that questioned the veracity of the director's testimony? This email doesn't say anything about the director's testimony at all. None. Zero. Well, read this. It says, there is a good possibility the DC elements of our organization are not being forthright about the events of the day or the influence of government assets. And with that, Mr. Allen said he was referring to the director's testimony. But that's not what this email says. It had nothing to do about Director Ray's testimony. It had to do with the fact that his allegiance seemed to be off. And did Mr. Allen describe how he was questioning Director Ray's testimony with this statement in his Security Division interview? I can't remember exactly what he said, if it related specifically to this. What he said, that I do remember specifically from his interview, was the reason he shared this, was because the Holy Spirit told him to. I don't know if the Holy Spirit told him that the director lied. I don't know. He said he shared this stuff because of that. During Mr. Allen's Security Division interview, was he asked about these alleged sympathies that he was espousing? Yes. And what was Mr. Allen's response to those allegations? Mr. Allen's response was that he believed that the Holy Spirit had called him to share with the individuals on his squad in the field office. Did he ever say that he aligned himself with the individuals who participated in events at the Capitol on January 6th? He emphasized a sympathy to the individuals. When you say emphasize a sympathy, what do you mean by that? That, again, when you take in totality everything that was provided, to include his interview, it evolved into an allegiance concern. Okay. In his interview, it became clear that he was struggling between friend and foe, like he couldn't figure out what was truth and what wasn't. And what do you mean by what was truth and what wasn't? There is facts regarding January 6th that are facts. He doesn't align to those facts. He does not believe that the United States government is honest in those facts. And did Mr. Allen in his interview, was he ever asked if he aligned himself with the individuals who participated in the events at the Capitol on January 6th? I'm sorry, I don't remember that specifically being asked of him or not asked of him. Allen never said that he aligned himself with the individuals who participated in the events at the Capitol on January 6th, and the FBI never bothered to ask him if he was aligned with them. What Marcus Allen, a devout Catholic, made clear in his testimony was that he aligned himself with the Holy Spirit, also called the Spirit of Truth. His allegiance to the truth, that federal law enforcement had some degree of infiltration among the crowds gathered at the Capitol on January 6th, rather than a false narrative promoted by the government, caused Moore to revoke Allen's security clearance and remove him from the rolls of the FBI, citing an allegiance concern. Moore's retaliation against Allen, based on his religious beliefs, is illegal, and her removing him from the rolls of the FBI for his allegiance to the truth is corrupt. The FBI whistleblower retaliation cases are not personal or vengeful. They are political. Allen's allegiance to the truth, based on his sincerely held religious beliefs, threatened to undermine the politicized January 6 prosecutions. So Moore pulled his security clearance and removed him from the rolls of the FBI. Allen's testimony as a whistleblower threatened to expose the FBI's politically motivated misconduct. So Moore assassinated his character to reduce his effectiveness as a witness. Moore accused Allen of making false statements, an offense that can be criminally charged. Mr. Allen was given a lead, which is a request to run open source information on an individual who was a potential subject of a January 6th investigation. He did not provide any information back, stating instead that he found no evidence of criminal activity or unlawful behavior. The agent at the time, they closed the lead, marked it of no value, and no case was opened. Subsequently, additional information came forward out of another office that was again forwarded back to the Charlotte field office, where they were asked to re-look at this lead. When they opened it back up, the agent asked a different analytical entity to run the exact same open source information, and that information brought back positive results that led to the opening of a case against the January 6 subject. So is it accurate to say that the information Mr. Allen provided in the first place, stating that there was no evidence of wrongful activity, was in fact a false statement? That would be correct. Moore's attempt to assassinate Allen's character is obvious. Allen did not say there was no evidence. He said he found no evidence. Moore never checked to see what evidence Allen did or did not find. Moore equated Allen with infamous spy Robert Hansen and accused him of obstruction of justice, a chargeable offense. Is it fair to say that it's possible you can have an employee in the FBI who is both a high performer in terms of his duties generally, but also a security risk? Robert Hansen was promoted to a supervisory level. And can you explain how that is an example of somebody who is both a security risk and a high performer? Robert Hansen was trading information to the Soviets, who was absolutely not aligned to the United States' best interest. And it's very possible for someone to, again, admit one thing while being someone else. Now, in the end, with respect to Mr. Allen, the Security Division's investigations determined that Mr. Allen had obstructed the FBI's lawful investigation of the criminal subject that we mentioned earlier, correct? Yes, ma'am. Based on Moore's testimony, Allen, a devout Catholic, was someone who had questionable judgment, lacked candor, was dishonest, unreliable, and untrustworthy. Guideline E states, conduct involving questionable judgment, lack of candor, dishonestly, or unwillingness to comply with rules and regulations can raise questions about an individual's reliability, trustworthiness, and ability to protect classified or sensitive information. Of special interest is any failure to cooperate or provide truthful and candid answers during national security investigative or adjudicative processes. Do you believe that Guideline E supports the decision to suspend Allen's security clearance? Absolutely. Moore's claimed security concerns about Allen's negative open source search is a lie. No one ever asked him about the search. Moore's security division did not conduct a security investigation. They conducted a character assassination. When Mr. Allen stated there was no criminal activity that was found in an open source for an individual that we were considering a subject who had assaulted law enforcement actions, that would be an action. And was Mr. Allen asked about this at his security division interview? Those were found after his interview. Has Mr. Allen ever been asked by the FBI prior to the revocation of his security clearance about that matter? About the specific of the PASMAI search? Yes, ma'am. No. So Mr. Allen, as I said earlier, had no knowledge of this when he testified before the committee? You said that the special agent never brought it to his attention, never told that special agent supervisor. Is that correct? To my knowledge. In her attempt to discredit Allen's testimony before Congress, Moore had difficulty keeping her story consistent. Others raised concerns during the interviews. And who were those individuals? I can't tell you by name. Obviously the agent that closed the case or closed the lead out without pursuing the case. In the interview with the security division, with the special agent in question, did she say that she raised this issue with her supervisor? I don't remember her saying that in this document. At the time, I don't believe she thought it was a concern. Do you know if she mentioned it to Mr. Allen? To my knowledge, she didn't state that. But did the special agent ever bring it to his attention that he missed something? To my knowledge, the special agent didn't interview and state that she had. No. Okay, so do you know the range of time when the special agent asked Mr. Allen to look into this individual? He gave his reporting back to the special agent, and then the special agent asked another FBI employee to do open source searches. Do you know what time elapsed between those two? I don't. Moore did not try to determine if the open source information she accused Allen of not reporting even existed at the time Allen did his searches. Moore's claimed security concerns are a pretext used to retaliate against a whistleblower, and her so-called security investigation was a fraud. Moore was not concerned enough to review Allen's emails, instant messages, or statements before suspending his security clearance. Moore was not concerned enough to ask Allen what he did or did not find in his searches before accusing him of potential crimes, or determine if the information actually existed at the time Allen searched. Moore was not concerned enough to ask Allen if he actually had the sympathies she accused him of espousing. The only thing Moore actually appeared to have concerned herself with was Allen's religious beliefs that caused him to follow the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Truth. This concern was so great that she ultimately pulled his clearance and dismissed him from the roles of the FBI, citing an allegiance concern. And speaking of concerns, in violation of federal law, the FBI forced all of its employees who sought a religious accommodation, exempting them from forced vaccination, to put information about how they exercised a right protected by the First Amendment into a searchable database. The FBI employees, whose information is in this illegal database, are now concerned that the FBI was attempting to purge them from the FBI, citing the same allegiance concerns Moore used to purge Allen.